Alright, I'm going to wear these lensless 3D glasses so it actually looks like I know what I'm talking about. So I went to see Sinister recently, which is the latest in a long line of films produced by the people who made Insidious and Paranormal Activity. Now horror is a difficult genre to get right because it is the most decisive between people. You really have to take into account what people fear and what people are scared of. But in my opinion, Sinister is definitely in the better half of the spectrum. It's not that difficult though. Now, the film focuses on a true crime author who moves his family into a house where the previous owners committed suicide and hung themselves. Now obviously he uses that case as the subject of his next book and the starting point. But why would you move your wife and kids into a house where the previous owners committed suicide? That's a good question, audience member. That's one of the small problems I have with this film, is that many of the little things don't make sense, like things go unnoticed. How did he move his wife and his 2 young children into a house like that without them knowing? It kind of just, it needed a bit more explaining if I was to believe it. And then the plot continues. He goes into the house's loft and he finds a little box filled with home movies, all filmed on a Super 8 camera, and each of the movies details a previous family who had been slaughtered, and the only thing linking all of these films together was a certain symbol linked with a deity that eats children named Bagul. It's creepy stuff. And as it turns out, Bagul actually lives in the images of himself, so now he's watching the videotapes, and so Bagul now has a gateway into the guy's house. Sounds like a party. So I want to try and get the negatives of the film out of the way first. The film is very cliched. It appeals to very cheap jump scares. I'm fine with jumping out of my seat at a screen, but I need it to be justified. I need it to link with Bagul, you know? Most of the time the film doesn't do that. It goes for cheap scares, like characters coming in and characters having nightmares, blah 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 blah. It is a cheap trick, which is also effective, which I suppose is why a lot of horror films do it nowadays. Paranormal Activity! The plot is surprisingly interesting. If a little predictable at times, you can tell what's going to happen, although you are still heavily invested in it. This is due to the film's one main advantage, which is Ethan Hawke. My favourite scenes in the film weren't when Bagul became a threat and started entering the house. It was when Ethan Hawke's character started obsessing over these videotapes, and it was just him and the Super 8 projector in one room, and he was watching them with his notepad. They were very engrossing. Scott Derrickson directs these scenes well. He really devotes a lot of time to the writer's obsession over these films, and it really does go to show a lot of tension is built up, and it really is sort of mortifying. Sadly, this is why the first half of the film is much better than the second. As soon as Bagul becomes a threat to the family, the film starts to go downhill. Quite slowly though, so it is a gradual... Some of the most effective and genuinely terrifying jump scares are given away in the trailer, so I do suggest that if you haven't seen the trailer yet, please don't see it. Go and see the film blind, don't know anything about it, because that is the best way to watch a horror film after all. There is one scene in particular which wasn't given away in the trailer and did genuinely make me feel a little ill. It's not a nice scene. All the other secondary characters, the wife, the kids, the police, the university teacher, Inspector so-and-so, they're pretty much stock characters. They don't really bring anything genuine into the story. This is one of the films where the kids don't look creepy enough, and that is a genuine worry. The deity Bagul himself is an interesting concept and is quite startling to look at, although as the film goes on the effectiveness starts to wear off as you've seen him more and more gradually, and he just sort of sinks into the background until at a point when it comes to the ending you're really not bothered by him that much at all. Some of the film's cliches have been done to death, although this is a film that does try to be original and does create its own story, which has to be said is quite an achievement in today's day and age, what with all the horror remakes. It's just a shame that as soon as the audience is given some brand new information, the film suddenly ends. The ending is rushed. We're given all this information, we're given this brand new information which could give another life into the film, could give it the jolt start it needs to make it more exciting, but then it doesn't go with it. It just kind of lets it dangle, and the ending comes by, and there's no real oomph to the ending at all. It just kind of happens, and you let it happen. And it's not even... It's slightly creepy, but it's not creepy enough compared to the earlier tone of the film. And they say films are only as good as their endings, and this ending was slightly disappointing, which kind of dampens the whole experience that you've sat through. All in all, Sinister is a nice little solid horror film with a good premise, a few good jump scares, and a great central performance, and I can almost guarantee it's better than watching lights flicker off for an hour and a half before occasionally someone jumping at a camera. Anyway, I hope you liked my little review. If you've seen the film and liked it, why don't you leave a comment down below. We'll talk about it, we'll talk about horror in general, we'll talk about movies in general, we'll talk about unicorns. Let's talk about unicorns, shall we? And I'll see you guys next time I make a video. Goodbye.